In a split second, a routine police stop in a quiet Atlanta suburb spiraled into chaos when officers drew their weapons on Kira Wallace, a black woman who was simply driving home from her late-night shift. The cops thought they had their suspect, but they were wrong. Kira, a licensed gun owner, was armed and ready to protect herself. What unfolded next was a heart-pounding confrontation that left everyone stunned, challenging assumptions, exposing tensions, and sparking a citywide debate about trust, race, and the right to self-defense. Kira Wallace was no stranger to long nights. At 32, she'd spent the last decade working as a nurse practitioner at a community health clinic in Decatur, Georgia. Her shifts often stretched past midnight, and on this humid July evening in 2025, she was exhausted but focused as she drove her silver Honda Accord down Flat Shoals Parkway. It was just past 1 a.m., and the roads were nearly empty, save for the occasional delivery truck or late-night commuter. Kira's mind was on her 8-year-old daughter, Maya, who was staying with her grandmother for the night. She was looking forward to a quick shower and a few hours of sleep before picking Maya up in the morning. Behind her, a police cruiser flicked on its blue lights. Kira glanced in her rearview mirror, her heart rate ticking up slightly. She wasn't speeding, at least she didn't think so. Her tags were up to date, her license was valid, and she hadn't run any lights. Still, she felt a familiar knot in her stomach, the kind that came from years of hearing stories about encounters with police that went wrong, especially for people who looked like her. She signaled, pulled over to the side of the road, and took a deep breath, her hands gripping the steering wheel at 10 and 2. Two officers approached her car, one on each side. The officer on the driver's side, a stocky man with a flashlight in hand, tapped on her window. His name tag read, Officer D. Reynolds. The other officer, younger, stood near the passenger door, his hand resting on his holster. Kira lowered her window, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. "Good evening, ma'am," Officer Reynolds said. His tone clipped but professional. "Do you know why we pulled you over?" Kira's voice was steady, though her pulse wasn't. "No, officer, I don't. Was I speeding?" Reynolds didn't answer her question. Instead, he shone his flashlight into the car, the beam sweeping across the front seats, then landing on her purse in the passenger seat. "We're looking for a suspect in a robbery that happened about a mile from here. Silver sedan similar to yours. Can you step out of the vehicle, please?" Kira's mind raced. A robbery. She didn't fit any description of a robbery suspect. She was a single mom, a healthcare worker, not a criminal. But she knew better than to argue. "Okay, officer," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I'm going to unbuckle my seatbelt and open the door now." As she reached for the seatbelt, the younger officer on the passenger side suddenly tensed. "Hands where I can see them," he shouted, drawing his gun and aiming it through the window. Kira froze, her hand hovering over the buckle. Her heart pounded in her chest. She could see the barrel of the gun glinting in the streetlight, pointed directly at her. "Officer, I'm just unbuckling my seatbelt like you asked," she said, her voice shaking slightly but still controlled. "I'm not a threat." Reynolds, the older officer, raised a hand to his partner. "Easy, Carter," he said, but his own hand moved to his holster, and his eyes narrowed as he looked at Kira. "Ma'am, do you have any weapons in the vehicle?" Kira's throat tightened. She was a licensed concealed carry permit holder. Her Glock 19 was in her purse, legally registered and secured. She'd taken every precaution, completed the training, followed the laws, and kept her permit up to date. But in this moment, with two officers on edge and one already pointing a gun at her, she knew her next words could change everything. "Yes, officer," she said slowly, her hand still raised. "I have a legally registered firearm in my purse on the passenger seat. I have a concealed carry permit in my wallet, which is also in the purse. I'm not reaching for anything unless you tell me to." The air seemed to thicken. Officer Carter, the younger one, kept his gun trained on her, his jaw tight. Reynolds' expression hardened, and he took a step back, his hand now fully on his weapon. "Don't move," he said. "Keep your hands on the wheel." Kira complied, her mind racing through her options. She knew her rights. She'd studied them carefully when she decided to carry a gun for self-defense after a string of break-ins in her neighborhood 2 years ago. But she also knew the reality of moments like this. She was a black woman, alone at 1 a.m., with 2 armed officers who thought she might be a robbery suspect. The margin for error was razor-thin. "I'm not moving," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "But I'm not a suspect. I'm a nurse. I'm coming home from work. My ID and permit are in my purse. You can check them." Reynolds didn't respond immediately. He exchanged a glance with Carter, who still hadn't lowered his weapon. The younger officer's eyes were wide, his finger dangerously close to the trigger. Kira's stomach churned. She thought of Maya, her little girl who loved drawing and wanted to be a veterinarian someday. She couldn't let this escalate. She wouldn't. "Officer," Kira said, locking eyes with Reynolds, the calmer of the two, "I'm going to stay very still. You can get my purse yourself and check my ID and permit. I'm not a threat, and I'm not who you're looking for." Reynolds hesitated, then nodded slightly. "All right," he said. "Carter, cover me." He reached through the open window, carefully picking up Kira's purse and stepping back to the curb. He opened it, pulled out her wallet, and found her driver's license and concealed carry permit. He studied them under his flashlight, his expression unreadable. "Everything checks out," Reynolds said after a moment, his tone softening slightly. "But we need to search the vehicle to confirm you're not the suspect." Kira's jaw tightened. She knew they had no probable cause for a search. Her car matched a vague description, but that wasn't enough. She also knew that refusing could escalate things further, and with Carter's gun still drawn, she wasn't willing to take that risk. "I understand," she said, her voice measured. "But I want to make it clear that I'm cooperating fully, and I expect to be treated with respect. I'm not a criminal." Reynolds nodded, but Carter's gun didn't waver. "Step out of the vehicle slowly," Reynolds said. "Keep your hands visible." Kira complied, moving deliberately as she opened the door and stepped onto the pavement. She kept her hands raised, her eyes darting between the 2 officers. Carter finally lowered his weapon, but his posture remained tense, like he was waiting for her to make a wrong move. As Reynolds began searching the car, Kira stood on the side of the road, her heart still racing. She could feel the weight of the moment, the weight of being a black woman in a situation where a single misunderstanding could cost her everything. She thought about the stories she'd heard, the videos she'd seen, the names that had become hashtags. She pushed those thoughts down and focused on staying calm, staying alive. The search was quick. Reynolds found nothing. No stolen goods, no contraband, just a few of Maya's crayons and a half-empty water bottle in the back seat. He stepped back, his expression a mix of relief and frustration. "All right, Ms. Wallace," he said, handing her purse back. "You're free to go. We're sorry for the inconvenience." Kira took her purse, her hands steady but her eyes burning with anger she didn't dare express. "Inconvenience," she said, her voice low but sharp. "You pointed a gun at me. You thought I was a criminal because I drive a silver car. I deserve better than that." Reynolds opened his mouth to respond, but Carter cut in, his tone defensive. "We're just doing our job, ma'am. There was a robbery, and your car matched the description." "My car," Kira repeated, her voice rising slightly. "Not me. Not my life. You didn't even ask me anything before you drew your weapon. I told you I was armed legally, and you still treated me like a threat." Carter's face reddened, but Reynolds raised a hand to silence him. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset," Reynolds said. "We'll make a note of this in our report. You can file a complaint if you feel you were mistreated." Kira's laugh was bitter. "A complaint," she said. "Right." She knew what that meant. Paperwork that would go nowhere, a system that protected its own. She wanted to say more, to demand accountability, but she also wanted to get home to her daughter. She took a deep breath, got back in her car and drove away, her hands trembling on the wheel. The encounter didn't end there. By morning, Kira had posted about the incident on X, detailing every moment: the blue lights, the gun, the fear, the humiliation. Her post went viral, shared thousands of times by people across Atlanta and beyond. Local activists picked up the story, demanding answers from the Decatur Police Department. News outlets reached out to Kira for interviews, and soon her face was on every local channel, her voice amplifying a story that felt all too familiar to too many. The police department issued a statement, calling the stop standard procedure, and defending the officer's actions as necessary for public safety. But the public wasn't buying it. Protests erupted outside the police station, with signs reading "Kira is not a threat" and "Stop targeting us." Community leaders called for body camera footage to be released, and when it was, it showed exactly what Kira had described: a tense, unnecessary escalation driven by a vague description and a quick trigger finger. Kira didn't want to be a symbol, but she became one. She spoke at community forums, her voice steady as she recounted the fear of that night. "I was armed, yes," she said at one event, her eyes locked on the crowd. "But I wasn't a threat. I followed every rule, and they still treated me like I didn't belong in my own car, in my own city." The officers faced scrutiny. Officer Carter, the younger one, was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. Reynolds, the senior officer, issued a public apology, but it rang hollow to many. The city council promised reforms: better training, stricter protocols for stops, more transparency. But for Kira, it wasn't enough. She filed a lawsuit against the department, not just for herself but for everyone who'd ever been pulled over, profiled, or made to feel like a suspect for no reason. The lawsuit dragged on, but it sparked change. Community organizations partnered with the city to create a civilian oversight board. Police training programs were revamped, with a focus on de-escalation and addressing implicit bias. Kira's story became a catalyst, a reminder that one moment, one wrong stop, could ripple outward, forcing a city to confront its flaws. Kira herself kept going. She went back to work, picked up Maya from her grandmother's, and tried to find normalcy. But she carried the weight of that night with her. She still carried her Glock too, not out of fear but out of resolve. She'd done everything right and she'd survived. Now she was determined to make sure others did too. Her story spread far beyond Atlanta. On X, people shared their own experiences, their own encounters with police that left them shaken but determined. Hashtags like #Kira Wallace and #NotASuspect trended for weeks. Academics wrote papers about the incident, analyzing the intersection of race, gun ownership, and policing. Lawyers cited her case in courtrooms across the country. And in quiet moments, Kira would read the messages from strangers, mothers, fathers, young people, who thanked her for speaking up, for showing them they weren't alone. The shocking part wasn't just the stop or the gun pointed at her, or even the fact that she was armed and still walked away alive. It was what came after: a woman who refused to be silenced, a community that refused to look away, and a system that, for once, had to listen. Kira Wallace wasn't just a nurse, a mother, or a gun owner. She was a force, and her story was far from over.